Hey everybody, it's Annie Thomas, and I'm so happy you're here today. We are on video 5.3 of the My Moments video series, looking at how we can build connections through exploring limits and extents. And today we are going to talk a little bit about how we can make a yes-no exchange for everything in our life. So let's just assume that, again, as we've talked about, we have a finite amount of energy. Crazy, right? We totally do. And let's just assume that when we are looking at each day, we probably honestly have plenty of things to take up all our energy on our to-do list, like plenty. And we also know that through the day, there's asks that come up. There's things that we didn't know about or that got brought to us later, and they need to be fit in. They need to go into a space that's already full. So what are we going to do about that? A lot of times I will just push harder, but what I'm doing is I'm not intentionally taking control of where I am saying no. So a lot of times what I'm saying no to is sleep and rest and taking care of myself. Like, just that's usually what goes. And that is a no. By saying yes over here, I am saying no to sleeping more or resting or whatever. And sometimes that's okay, but sometimes that's really not where I want to say my no. And it creates this illusion that I am infinite, and I'm not. So for myself, I really want to look at, if I'm saying yeses, then where can I put my nos that correspond? So there's a couple of different ways you can do this. If you are really like precise and into numbers, you can actually go through and on your calendar, number things with an effort of 1 to 3. Or if you want to get more specific, 1 to 5. Each thing, if it's, a 1, it's not going to take that much effort. And I'm talking about, when I say effort, the investment of time and energy and emotions, all of this, all the things that go into effort. And it's going to be not a lot, 1. If it's going to be like a whole bunch, either that would max out at 3 if you have a 1 to 3 scale, of 5 if you have a 1 to 5 scale, and you can number that. And so then if you have a new thing come up that you want to put into a day, you give that a number. Let's say that that I have something that's a 3 come up. I can either decide to do no on 3 1s, or one task that's a 3, or a task that's a 2 and a 3, whatever it is. But I just need to add up that whatever I'm putting in is the same number as what I'm taking back out. So you can do it that way. But for those of you who are watching my other track, this may fall under something that for a lot of us is a make it harder. Is something that we're doing that's not simplifying our life. It seems like it's going to, but it's not. And it's trying to achieve, I can catch myself sometimes doing things like that to try to achieve perfection. And sometimes I need to do that because it's what allows me to see it and to own it, to make it real. But sometimes I really just need to kind of go with my gut. So I'm going to show you vulnerably my real to-do list from this last weekend. So here it is. This is after the weekend, but I made this list and there's 19 things on it. And I made the list while I was at a Saturday morning soccer tournament for my daughter. And I knew we were going to be out all day. And some of the things I put on the list were going to be done that day, but a lot of them were really going to be done the next day. So looking at this, I would say all but 3, maybe 4 things were going to have to go on Sunday. So that's like 15 things, 16, somewhere in there. that's a lot of things for one day, but I just put them all down. And I did the stuff on Saturday and it was great. I felt really excited because I scheduled in time to spend with my kids and with my husband, and um it was good. It was really good. And but the next day I had all these things kind of looming over me, and I found myself exhausted. Like I was so tired. And I had the list, the thought in my head, got to get it done, got to get it done. Nothing's going to go right this week. If you don't get it done, you got to get it done. And, but I knew that, as many of you heard, naps are super important for me. So I knew I had to get a nap in. So I prioritized that, even though it took a pretty big chunk of the day. And as the day wore on, I was getting increasingly anxious because there was so much on my list and so much I hadn't marked off. And I was just really upset about it. I was having just like a huge, like almost anxiety attack about it. So I went through and I said some no's. And when I say no's, for the moment, and you can't really see very well, but I circle it. If I do it, I cross it out. If I circle it, like this thing down here, that means that I'm putting it on hold and I'm moving it to the future. And then if it has an arrow next to it, that's something I still need to do. So when I did that, though, it was like I could breathe again. Like it was going to be okay. Because number one, I was getting a lot more done than I thought I was. But there was so much space. The anxiety of not being able to do everything was taking up, that it was super distracting for me, just incredibly distracting. And so I didn't see how much I was really getting done. I also didn't see that I had things on my list that could absolutely be put to next weekend. Like, absolutely. Like, nice to get done now, but not with how everything else was racking up. And so circling them, for me, just the action of circling them and allowing myself to say no in that way, oh, it really, really, really helped me. And then by putting the arrows next to the things that I really needed to prioritize, even if I couldn't get them all done that day, to put them into the next day and go, make sure, let's prioritize this before next weekend. It made me feel like I was being responsible, like I was taking care of what needed to be taken care of. So I think when we're going to do this, there's a couple of things that we have to do. We have to recognize, first of all, that we really do say no every time we say yes. And so that is going to happen, whether we do it intentionally or not. And saying no to things on purpose is a life-giving thing, something that allows us to have more control, more input into our lives. So that's the first thing. The second thing is, how am I piling on to myself in my need to do all the things? Like, where am I creating this big burden for myself that is completely anxiety inducing? And where do I need maybe some permission from myself, from my family, from my work, from my boss, wherever, to be able to make some space? Sometimes I can give myself that space, but sometimes I need to ask another human to say, hey, do you think it's okay if I push this? And just from experience, the answer is just basically almost always yes. And if it's, well, if you could prioritize this, like there's maybe one tiny part of it and it's not the whole thing. So it really helps a lot if we look through our lists and see, is there something that we can give ourselves permission to push? And is there someone we can appeal to in our environment, whether we still feel like we should or not under optimal circumstances? Do I feel like I should always be able to give myself permission for things? Sure. But especially at work, but also just in my life in general, it really does help to have another human just say, yeah, I think it's okay if you push that one. Or I can do it, or that doesn't actually, do we have to do that? All valid questions. So look for the places that you can give yourself some permission to breathe, some permission um, to say no. And also make sure that you're looking at all the things you are doing, all the things you've said yes to, um, all the things that came up that you maybe didn't even put on the list that you still said yes to anyway. Again, over the weekend, my daughters needed some time. We needed to sit and talk, and that was such an important yes. I needed to say yes, and so winter's coming right now where I am, and we need to get ready. But I can push doing some of the winterizing stuff until next weekend because my daughters need me now. Like that was a really awesome exchange for me. Um, but in order for me to feel good about it, I had to make a plan for how to push it, how to say no, how to redistribute it. That helped me a lot. Um, and then let yourself highlight the things that are really important, the things you can't say no to, um, so that you can feel in touch with how responsible and awesome you really are. Um, I have a really hard time getting away from this idea that I am going to spontaneously compress into a lazy, avoidant person who just doesn't want to do anything and all this other stuff. But that's not who I am. And the more I can give myself credit for being who I actually am, someone who does take her responsibilities seriously, who does get her work done, who is going to work really hard, and that does not tend towards those things that I'm always accusing myself of. If I can just start to own that, I think that makes saying some of the no's um, more possible. So, what are you going to do this week? What do you have on tap? What's going on? And where, as things come up, can you say an intentional no as you say your yeses? And chances are you don't even have to wait because, like me, you might have way too many things on your list to do in a single day. So, on purpose, earlier than I did at the end of the day, after carrying stress the whole day, stress and condemnation about how badly I was doing, can you, at the beginning of this day, at the beginning of this week, at the beginning of this moment, look at that list and give yourself some permissions to say, you know what, that's going to be an intentional no, so I can say yes to these other things, say yes to these prioritized things. And if you're feeling overwhelmed at the thought of saying that no by yourself, look for someone who can come alongside you as a partner to help you say no, to help you find your no's, and then maybe you can help them find their no's too. Um, I think sometimes within the environment, we're all suffering in the same ways. We're all dying of the same stresses and the same worries, and we're kept apart by the fear of how we're going to look if we can't do it all. But the truth is, we all can't do it all. And so the person right next to you may be feeling exactly the way that you are, and they may be afraid that you'll think bad things, just like you're afraid they'll think bad things if you don't do everything all the time. So who can you partner with to be able to start to say those intentional no's together, so that we have more space for the yeses and we have more space for the lives we want to live. Thanks so much for joining me today. I hope you have a great day. Bye bye.